Hello and welcome to the Appleby Hour. Hello and welcome to the presidential debate. I will be reacting to and providing commentary for the 2024 presidential debate. I have seen it, or at least a lot of it, and I'm very unhappy because, I don't know, because Kamala's winning. Sounds strange to say. We will be watching on to what's a 1.25 because fuck this.
Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special, the most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be.
Ugh. Make sure to do the YouTube thing so I can afford a pair of headphones that doesn't show up on the mic and also that are symmetrical and not held together with tape.
A great nation again.
Face to face, historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight. And
that clock is, I mean, I get it, useful, but also a little comical, kind of funny.
This hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, I've seen a lot of this debate. I've seen it talked about. I've seen the moments, and obviously this is a big one. Her walking across the stage and straight to him, and clearly he doesn't. Clearly, he does not expect it. And yeah, it is very funny.
Let's have a good debate. Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening.
Is it? Is it though? Is it an honor? I feel ashamed.
We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started.
Spirited and thoughtful. Well, you'll get one of those from what I hear.
I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
You gotta see, when you're asked a yes/no question, you should answer with a yes or a no. If you want to stick a comma and some more sentence after that, that's fine. But you gotta start there. It's.
I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working.
Okay, that was not the question. God, I hate politicians.
Working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that.
Okay, first specific policy. Now, she mentioned the unaffordability of housing, but she hasn't brought up anything to actually do it. so $6,000 tax credit, that's fine. I don't know why it has to be in the form of a tax credit. Why can't you just give them $6,000? You know, like, what if you're so poor that you don't even need to file taxes, right? What's the point of the tax credit? So that, like, giving it in the form of a tax credit, it helps the upper lower class. It's like, okay, you people who are like dangling right on the edge of, you know, like me, those people, you get to benefit from this, you know, but not the really poor people, you know, those disgusting trailer trash, you know, those people, they don't need that $6,000 tax credit. You know, we need soldiers after all.
That those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped.
See, does this work? Is this really what people want? To hear about the character, like the backstory of the fucking candidate? I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about any of this. I don't care.
Raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
Look, not bad, again, but $50,000 to start a business, I mean, it can help, certainly, but that is not enough startup capital. Okay? And again, why can't you just give it in the form of a loan? Like, a loan with real freakishly low interest rates that you can handle because you're the fucking US government? Like, is that so crazy? Why does everything have to be a fucking tax credit?
Opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will
I haven't even been looking at Trump. Man, he's a dour motherfucker.
result in $5 trillion to America's deficit.
His skin is like dripping off of his skull. I guess, you know, it's just my opinions about the man coloring the way I see him. He is just old. That's your skin dripping off your skull. That's just what happens. But oh man, look at that. Look at that neck pussy. It's beautiful.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about...
He's not even attempting to respond. Man, Trump must be really out of it. That's weird.
4,000...
I'm glad I'm finally watching this, as much as I hate that I have to react to it. But
dollars more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that.
Oh, and just so you know. Yeah, well, you know, Americans are too fucking stupid to understand what a tariff is or what it does, so she says it's a sales tax. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of with Trump on this one. It's kind of stupid that she calls it a sales tax, but it's also stupid that, like, we're too stupid to know what anything with a sales tax is. Anyway, when I said Trump wasn't even trying to respond, like, he knows he's on camera. You can, like, usually he emotes. He's like, you know, something like that. But no, nothing from him tonight. This is actually a pretty, I don't know. He looks ghoulish here.
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I
What have they set out to do exactly? What have they done? I don't feel it. I don't feel like there are things going on, particularly, you know?
I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than.
Yes, I wonder. I love Republicans. Out of one side of their mouth, they're like, no, there's no such thing as corporate greed. It's all inflation. And then out the other side of their mouth, they're like, yes, well, some things have risen much more than inflation. You know, the fact that these two things disprove each other doesn't matter to them, you know. It's like, oh, okay, so inflation's gone up 20%, but I'm going to raise prices 400%. You know, no greed there. No
Than
greed
they
to
were
be
just
seen.
a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions
He just keeps going with the mental asylums thing. Oh my God, I'm only 5 minutes in.
and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied
I hope someone out there enjoys my suffering.
right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast.
I'm not really here to dunk on Trump too much. He's a fascist. He's trying to take over our country. If you're not against him, then you can go fuck yourself. But that's obviously a lie. Immigrants, both illegal and legal, are obviously they're less violent than because I don't know if you know this, but if you're not from a place, you're gonna feel a little on edge. You're gonna mind your P's and Q's, okay? So it's just ridiculous. Republicans don't even care. I mean, they'd be pro, like, I don't know. It's they don't care about homicide when a native person does it. They don't give a shit at all. I mean, they do, but they're like only in the abstract to fearmonger about crime. They don't actually care when it happens, especially if it's on someone on their side who did it.
Created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Well, I fucking wonder why. I hate the inability of Americans in general to accept that there are things outside of their control. But on this national political level, like I know that if one of these candidates said, well, that was because of COVID, that everybody would freak out because it's like, well, you're not taking responsibility. It's like, yeah, they're not fucking responsible. There are things outside of a president's power to influence or control.
Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
That's true.
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook. A bunch of lies, grievances.
That's interesting that she is wearing the gold flag pin and not Trump.
And name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed.
I mean, obviously, not that Trump would know that it was going to be a gold flag pin, but like, I don't know. Her coming in with gold, I feel like she really is playing mind games.
And dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it.
Well, I believe that. When he says he has nothing to do with it, what he means is he did not personally write or read it. And yeah, no one was under the delusion that you've ever written or read anything, Trump.
purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to
Oh, yeah. Open book.
do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic.
Yeah, but you didn't do shit to create it. It just happened. You didn't do anything. You didn't pass a single piece of economic legislation your entire fucking presidency. None at all. You passed some tax cuts. Is that it? I can't think
And
of
the
it.
pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over.
I mean, obviously it could have been done fucking better, but yeah, he did okay once he got his ass in gear.
Country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that
True.
created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has
What? For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, because Trump is fucking, I don't know, he doesn't know how to speak English. The bounce back jobs. What he's saying is that the pandemic, we lost a lot of jobs, and then the jobs came back, and they're taking credit for that period of the jobs coming back and being like, we created all these new jobs. But Trump's saying, well, they're not really new jobs. They're just the jobs from before the pandemic, and there's some truth in that.
no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best
Yeah, but I'm very skeptical that you're going to do it. And even if you did, even if you delivered on all these promises, it would be like, what is this policy package? Oh, I like, how many fucking people are small business owners? Not a lot. Not many, okay? Like, there are other people in the goddamn economy that you need to be concerned about. You know, like, what are you going to do for the cashier? You haven't said anything about the single 20-something cashier. Where's that?
economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would.
Yeah, I love that we're citing Goldman Sachs as like, oh yeah, they have the best interest of the American people at heart. Right on. Rest in power. Goldman and Sachs.
strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation.
All right, so here's the thing about the deficit, right, and the national debt. It doesn't matter until it does. That's the thing. As long as we're the most powerful country in the world, as long as we control the world and all of its oceans, as long as we have that, the debt is a good thing. But the second that starts to crack and crumble, the debt becomes a very, very bad thing. So keep that in mind. As long as the empire functions, the debt is fine. You know, maybe it should be down, but we can have it as high as we want. And as long as, you know, if the empire is not doing so great, the deficit suddenly becomes a problem.
And by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a
Well, yeah, I mean, because those professors don't want a plan for us either, you know. She says he has no plan for you. It's true. Although, Kamala, I'm not going to benefit from your $50,000. I'm not going to benefit from any of your tax breaks, okay? Actually, maybe I will. Suppose that all depends on you, you know? Get us to 1 billion subs so I can found my limited liability corporation. Whoa. I don't know what I'll do. I'll probably do a sole proprietorship, even though the taxes are worse.
great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like
Very, yeah.
4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that it
Yes. So this is one thing I'm going to be talking about on the channel more, but Kamala's policyless, vibes-based, generic Democrat campaign, joy. I don't like it.
just,
Not enjoying
we'll
it.
try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years.
Yeah, that's not how tariffs work. I think he may not actually know how tariffs work. I think he thinks that it's a tax on another country. How would you levy a tax on another country, Trump? How would you enforce that? It doesn't make any sense.
I charge
In case you don't know, a tariff is a tax on imported goods. So the people who are the businesses that are buying imported goods and then selling them to American consumers, they pay that tax, and then they would pass on that tax to the consumer because that's how businesses work.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions.
Yes, well, that's because of antagonism with China. It doesn't have anything to do with the, China is like a geopolitical rival. It doesn't have anything to do with the effectiveness of tariffs. They want to. See, this is the thing. When he says China will pay, tariffs do have the effect of decreasing trade between two countries, but because the businesses decide that it's not worth it anymore. The American businesses are still the ones that eat the cost. Either they pay the tariff or they go somewhere more expensive to buy the goods, and then they pass that along to the consumer. Now, sometimes that can result in a higher quality product, but that's in no means a guarantee.
Of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
I love how every time we bring up inflation, it's spoken about in terms of bacon, because God bless this great country. But like, you know what? It speaks to me. It's true.
The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your
Yes, well, there was a global pandemic. I don't know if you noticed that.
response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling America.
How did she she saved it, but she slightly flubbed Donald. How did she say that? I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details.
See, this is anti-China stuff. She's attacking. This is the thing I wanted to get at with the debate. Stuff like this. The Democratic Party is moving to the right. They're to the right of where the Republicans were just a few, like when I was born. They're way to the right of where the Republicans were in 1999. It's insane. I mean, she's literally, I mean, I agree because the thing that we're gonna go to war with China over is Taiwan, and I do agree that Taiwan should be independent, and I think I support the defense. Like, if there's a draft and it picks me, I guess I'm just gonna have to fucking say fuck, you know. I agree with the fight, so I can't. I don't know. I can't be a conscientious objector. Hopefully, I'm just in too bad shape mentally and physically. Maybe they won't take me, but if they ask, I'm there, I guess. So she is attacking Trump for not being hawkish enough on China. She's saying, you shared this information, this technology with China, which, I personally believe that the technology and inventions and intellectual property in general should be freely distributed and shared around. Seems like we'll make more things faster that way. I don't know. But whatever. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. This debate did seem to sort of, change the tide of the election. Seems like Kamala's doing better. Seems like Trump is doing worse. He's spiraling. He's listening to the wrong people. And so it looks good for us, which is why I'm so, I said at the beginning of the video, which is why I'm so upset, why I'm so bothered and demoralized by all of this. It's, I don't know. Now that it seems like she's on the path to victory, I just wish that she would, I don't know, like have a policy somewhere, or I don't know, be lefty, because that's where she got all her momentum in the first place. Was she's to the left of Biden. She picked Walz, and then like surprise picked Walz, and then as soon as that happened, like right after that, they secured the nomination. Boom, we've got it, and she just veered to the right. It was crazy. I don't know. I don't know. See, the problem, like I said earlier, Trump represents this fascist movement. He's the figurehead, right? And he's the strong man. And so that's an immediate threat. Obviously, that needs to be defeated. But then in the long term, and I'll talk about it more as the issues come up, the Democrats are also moving in that direction. They just want to be as right-wing as the GOP, but, just a little sliver less to convince us to vote for them. And it's been working my entire life. And so, obviously, yes, the Republican problem. What's the solution to the Republican problem? Well, the Democrats have to win. All right. Long term, though, what's the solution to the Democrat problem? And I don't know. It seems like I don't want to give up on third parties. And I know what you're hearing. You hear me say that and you're like, oh, fuck this guy. But no, listen. Here's the thing. The Green Party, the Libertarians, they're not that serious because they only run national level candidates. We need to start at the congressional level, maybe even state congressional level. Maybe even smaller, like you need to start small. You need to build up the party. You need to get representation in Congress. And then when one of the two major parties, because of the way our system is set up, it is mathematically impossible. There will always be only two parties until reforms are made. But reforms won't be made unless some other party besides Democrat or Republican gets into power. How do we do that? Okay, so we try to engineer things so that one of these parties will collapse and we can replace them. Now, I would be fine replacing the Democrats, right? Having Republicans as our enemy, but obviously it would be preferable if you could defeat the Republicans and be enemies to the Democrats. So it would be liberalism versus leftism rather than leftism versus conservatism. Even though, in a liberal democracy, liberalism is conservatism. It's just centrism. Like let's just keep things how they are. That's conservation, right? But obviously, the right in America, because whatever, you know what I mean. The right in America has become even further right. Now they're straight up fascist. They don't want to preserve. They want to go back. Anyway, that's my rant.
details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce.
Yeah, and they both candidates are all pro AI. Like whatever. I guess I'm ambivalent about it, like most things, but I do think it's funny. People, you know, they always crow about division. Oh, isn't it so horrible? We're all divided. But in a two-party state, division is democracy. If both parties agree on everything, then in what sense do you have a democracy at all? You know? So every position that the Republicans and the Democrat disagree on is a position, that's a policy where there is no democracy in America at all.
So that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought
That was a weird... I'm surprised I hadn't heard that. I hadn't seen that clip. What is she implying? Okay.
their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her.
Yeah, that I agree with Kamala here. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? They literally did the CHIPS Act.
Because she has no policy.
That's one of the few things where the Biden administration does actually have policy. Hey, we're gonna bring back domestic chip manufacturing. It's something they actually did.
Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is.
And even then, that's another national security thing. Because the chips are made in Taiwan, and we know that we're about to go to war over Taiwan, probably 2026. That's my money's on 2026. Anyway, so they're just preparing for that war. They're like, well, we need chips, but we are going to go to war over Taiwan, so I guess we're going to have to start making them ourselves. Like,
is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected,
that clip I saw,
did she change it? And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these...
See, she is doing great with the silent responding. She's like... you know? He just looks dead up there when she's talking.
Millions and
at least he has so far.
Millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well,
how? What? I'm pretty sure criminality is good for the economy. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty goddamn sure.
Bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President,
you know, this
Harris,
is, I don't know if I've talked about this on the channel. Doesn't really matter. But Trump clearly has an actual conscience about abortion. And like, it clearly bothers him that he has to be pro-life to run in this party. You know, he was a Democrat before he became, you know, for most of his life before he became a Republican. And I think this is one of those issues that he actually cares about, and it does bother him that he was like the reason that it was repealed, which I think is interesting. He's always talking about how, like, I believe in exceptions, you know, and trying to like de-radicalize his base, which is not something you see a politician normally do. like stand up and I actually have a principle on this, although he's doing it weekly, you know, because he is more concerned about gaining power. But it would be nice to see Kamala do something like that. I don't know. I don't think I've seen any sincere belief from her whatsoever.
Says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion.
Yeah, I'm recording this debate and the vice presidential debate, which actually just happened a few hours ago, tonight, because I put both of them off. But whatever.
Abortion in the 9th month.
I'm excited. I'm more excited for that debate than I am for this debate because I don't know. These two are a little bland for me, but Vance and Walz, they're both kind of new, and I like Walz a lot more than I like Kamala. So.
Is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe.
Yeah, there he is. There he is with his "I believe in the exceptions" line. See, if he was solely concerned with winning, see, this is why Trump is such an interesting guy. If he was solely concerned with winning and taking power, then he wouldn't say that. But he does. So he has some kind of empathy, some kind of conscience in there somewhere, and it's just being, I don't know, it's just suppressed. It's buried. I don't know. He really is a fascinating guy. I just wish that, you know, I don't know. I wish I lived in Iceland.
Strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican.
See, he keeps saying this. He's about to say that the states, like, that it's been universally agreed upon by everyone in America that it would be better if abortion was a state's issue. I don't know why. You know what? No, I do know why. Because he has to ride this tightrope because he wants to make it clear that he's not going to fully repeal women's reproductive rights to his fan base. He needs them to understand that. I don't super know why. Again, the only explanation is that he actually has like a conscience, which is crazy. And so he says that it's good that it's being brought back to the states because a lot of states are choosing the more liberal position. And he's like, that's not my position, even though it clearly is. But look at how liberal they're, you know, it's actually kind of a surprise. Look at everything's so liberal, you know. I don't know. He's fascinating.
Liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your...
I love that. There we go. There's the fact check. I love that Republicans fucking lost their mind over that, even though obviously, yes, they're...
response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump.
Even with that, what was that? He just turned his head, but his lips are like zipped. Eyes forward. Stoic.
Hand-selected
Fucking react, Trump. What are you, a dead fish?
3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because their healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think.
See, this is interesting because this is a legitimate example where I think that Project 2025 does not have Trump support. I do not think if there was a national abortion ban that Trump would sign it. I'd be surprised. Unless he was doing, well, no, because he's not up for re-election. So he's trying to take over, so he wouldn't be worried about next election anyway. And then even if he was to, the cycle goes on and he isn't able to, establish himself as dictator or whatever, which, I give it a coin flip at this point. If he's elected, it's a 1 in 4 chance, really, at this point. Yeah, I don't think he'd sign that. So I get why she's attacking him on it, and he's made himself vulnerable to this attack, so I can't really fault her. Like, he is lying to his base. So
I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans.
Yeah, see, this is his answer. He's like, I'm not signing a ban, and then the Republicans are like, what? And then he's like, states' rights. He thinks that's the solution, but nobody wants it to be a states' rights thing. The Republicans don't want it to be a states' rights thing. They want a national ban. The Democrats don't want it to be a states' rights thing. They want national protection. So he's trying to walk a tightrope, and he's not. I don't know what he's doing, but he's not doing it.
Everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting, and it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states, and I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress.
See, but he won't. He can't commit to, yes, I would veto it. I would veto a national abortion ban.
To get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. in all fairness. J.D., and I don't
Yeah,
mind.
see, JD's playing the game. He's like, yeah, of course. I don't know. He doesn't know what he doesn't have a coherent strategy for this, because he doesn't have a coherent strategy for anything. But he's having to employ dishonesty here in a way that he's not used to, where I'm covering for a sincere belief, and it's huge, just flounders. It's really interesting.
He has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me. But I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it, because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans.
Yeah, they sure did.
They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that
Yeah, no, that's just not true. I've never heard a Democrat in my life say that abortion should be a state's issue. I'm pretty sure they all liked Roe. And all the Democratic voters I know wanted them to codify Roe with a congressional law.
everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand.
Just to pivot, I don't get why people can't answer this question. Here's my answer to this question. I'm fine with abortion right up until the end of the second trimester, and I think that there should be a period of time. Well, actually, I guess. Yeah, okay. So here's how it should work: abortion up to the second trimester, and if a man wants to give up his parental rights to the child and like cut ties to it, doesn't have to pay child support, that should also be within that 2 trimester period. And then if it happens right at the end of that 2 trimester period, I think that there should be an extension into the 3rd trimester. The 3rd trimester is kind of like a buffer zone. And then obviously if there's medical exceptions in that 3rd trimester, that would also be acceptable. And then obviously don't kill babies after they're born, I guess I should say that I can't remember which state it was. Some governor, they were talking about him earlier, saying that we'll put the baby aside and decide what to do with it later. I think in context, if I'm not mistaken, he was talking about children who were born with defects that, they're going to die as a baby. Then yeah, yeah, set the baby aside, we'll put it on life support. We'll try everything we can for it, but this baby is going to die. Right. Something I used to, my first job was I was room service in a hospital, and I've seen plenty of that. So, it's tragic, but it's a fact of life. It happens, sometimes you got to put the baby on the UV table until it fucking dies.
Understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers, to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America...
I get that it's not because it's because it isn't one of our top issues. Like when Americans are asked, what are your top issues? They don't say climate change, right? But if I'm not mistaken, there's no climate change question in here at all. I really hope there is in the vice presidential debate at least. But I just want to say, I can't really get up because I'm not wearing any fucking bottoms, but I'm hot as fuck. I live in southern Wyoming, and it's September. No, it's October 1st. Actually, it's the 2nd by now. It's 2 a.m. But it's October 2nd, and it's 80 fucking degrees in here or something. It's 77 or something.
The majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And
I mean, I don't know if you noticed the placement of that window, but I dwell in a basement. It's still fucking 70 plus degrees. Ideally, I want my house to be at 67, 68. I mean, 67's better, right? Because I believe... Wait. Never mind. Forget about 67.
That is why, in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a
I do love how, as time goes on, it's becoming more and more apparent just how dumb the American populace is, that he's like, IVF, which is fertilization. You know what? I've been doing that all night for you guys.
leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And
Love that line. Definitely saw that.
the other thing, you should ask.
I've been a leader on fertilization, folks. Nobody fertilizes better than me.
Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
7th month. Oh, I don't know why the way he said 7th.
Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question, would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor for.
Yeah, I really would not be fucking, I don't know, 7th month, 7th and a half. That's kind of where my soft line is, but the hard line is at birth, I feel like. Pretty simple.
Former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country.
Here we are. Here's the juicy bit. Here's where I get to rant about the Democrats.
Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know
Yes, there's, you know, if only there were a term for that. If only there were a way to shorten the syllables. She was the border czar. It's not propaganda. Czar in American politics just means that you're part of the executive branch, high up, and you have been appointed. Here's your problem. You solve this problem. You work on this, right? And she was made the border czar. She was presented like, do we not remember the do not come, I'm gonna come.
know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So before she gets into her, let's talk about immigration in the United States. Immigration is unambiguously a good thing. Obviously, more hands on deck, bigger economy, more money, more workers, higher velocity dollar. That's important. If for those of you who don't know, the velocity of a dollar is how quickly it changes hands, right? In a high velocity economy, there's lots of commerce going on. You know, you pay a dollar for a fucking lollipop, at the convenience store. You give them $1, and then that convenience store owner goes and uses that dollar to buy a house, and then the money that that he spent on that house goes into some rich guy's pocket, and from there, the velocity of the dollar drops. Now it's just being hoarded, in a big ball of investments, and I don't know. I'm not convinced that these day trading, instantaneous 2-second, I'm going to, trade every millisecond. I'm not convinced that fucking actually helps the economy. So, but even then, you can put it into land or into your savings. I mean, rich people don't really super do that because it isn't a very good investment. Doesn't keep up with inflation. But, you lock up your money in your net worth is the idea. You hoard, you leech, whenever I hear people talking about leeches on the economy, I'm like, okay, who here's the leech, right? Imagine we're in a body, we're in a human body, and each of us are cells, right? Who's the leech? the cell that's dying because it isn't getting enough oxygen because the circulatory system, like it isn't working right? Or is it the person who's got all the blood to themselves? It's just huge cyst of swirling, disgusting, putrid fluid, Which one of those cells is the leech?
I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations.
That kind of my fucking rants always fucking losing the plot. Anyway, here's what I wanted to say about immigration. It's just that immigration has gone up quite a bit over the last few years. So that's true, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them that won't be mentioned tonight, I don't think, is climate. But deportations have also been going up and up and up between administrations. So Trump is going to say, well, immigration's way up under you guys, which is true. But that isn't totally within their power to control. And then is not going to mention that deportations are down, or are way up, sorry. Because they have been going up, administration to administration. It just keeps climbing.
For the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Yep, that's true. That's 100% true.
And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we
I couldn't agree more, Kamala, but you were not that leader. I want you to be that leader. Why can't you just see, you know what you need to do, but you won't do it? I don't know. Like, if you were truly that leader, Kamala, you know what? Maybe I don't think I've seen your closing statements. Maybe at the end of this, she's like, and it's truly shameful that there was no climate question in tonight's debate. ABC should be ashamed of itself. We need to do better than that. Here's my climate plan. And then you list a whole slew of policies I didn't even know you had, If you are truly that leader, then you'll do that. Let's see, shall we?
have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really
I do believe that is true.
unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like
I think this is the moment, because up until now, he's looked bored, he's looked tired, he's looked unhappy, just like stone-faced, right? But this moment, she's about to get in his head about his rallies.
Hannibal Lecter.
If I
People
believe.
talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you the
Yeah, look at that. Look at that immediately. The eyes light up. He's suddenly present. He's like, people leave my rallies because they're boring? What did you just say to me? What did you say to me?
one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe.
See, and now he's reacting. He's suddenly there. He's in the debate again.
We deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask you.
Yeah, he's eager. He's like, yes, I would like to respond.
Did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them.
All right, Trump, here's my next question. Shut up about your question. Let's talk about my rallies, okay? They're the biggest rallies. They're the best rally.
To be there. And then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people.
That's a good freeze frame. If only it weren't in 720p ABC. Oh my God, look at them. Aren't they beautiful? Aren't they beautiful? They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Wow.
People that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far
Wow,
as
Kamala has some crazy canines on her. I like that.
rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals.
So this is one thing that people bring up, is that ABC is biased towards Kamala Harris, which is obviously true. But it's partially because they're biased towards the truth, and Trump's entire thing has to be based on lies for it to work. That's all I'm really gonna say about that.
Individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
all
I've
this.
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
I do love it. Her laughing at him is definitely a position of strength. I mean, there's a reason that everyone seems to agree pretty much that she, like, everyone agrees that she won this debate except for the people who don't, and those people are like, ABC, you're so biased. Yeah, no shit. It's a fucking media outlet. They're biased. Like, you need to know what the bias is going in, and you need to adjust for that as a presidential candidate. Like, fuck off.
This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
Yep, see, again. I love that they celebrate the Goldman Sachs endorsement. They celebrate, like, the Dick Cheney endorsement. It's like, man, I do not want you to be endorsed by Dick Cheney. I want Dick Cheney to hate you. If Dick Cheney doesn't hate you, then there's a problem.
Including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear.
Right, but you're not going to address them either. Unless you're like, look, okay. The true test of a person, I think Abe Lincoln said something to this effect, give them power, So I don't want to judge too badly, because who knows? Maybe she really is a Marxist. Maybe Trump is right. Maybe her Marxist dad did teach her well. Maybe she'll be the most based president ever. But right now, she's not promising to fix any of our problems at all. So I don't know. It just rings hollow. And I feel like she'd be winning by so much more if she did truly put forward something with a vision. But she has no vision. She's an empty suit. This is just another career move for her. I don't believe that she has any truly deeply held convictions. I want her to change my mind on that desperately, but I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Clear in this election.
President Trump will give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job.
You know what? That's true. That's true. He's an interesting guy. People are fascinated. There's a reason he was able to con his way into the presidency, is that he's just, I don't know. He's fascinating. I've said it before.
And they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists.
Look, I'm not big on biographies. I'm not crazy about them, but I have never leafed. Well, actually, that's not true. I have read sections of an Obama biography during middle school. Actually, no, it was elementary school. It was 5th grade. Whatever. But I have never of my own accord read an Obama book. I have picked up a Trump book off the Walmart shelf and leafed through it a little, So a little more interesting as far as people go.
They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes.
See, I heard that, but I heard it out of context, and I thought it makes more sense in context. It's an interesting line.
Than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Except for Biden.
Let me continue on immigration.
Which is not, it's not very impressive because the population rises over time.
It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many.
He's not going to get into the process, because if he got into the process, then everybody would realize, oh, this is horrifying. This is actually horrible. There'd be a lot of Republicans who had that realization as well. I don't know. They don't think about the consequences of the things that they prescribe. They're just like, oh yeah, we want these illegals out.
Millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our...
Crime is also down in the United States. So who cares? Even if it were true, who cares?
country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric.
It isn't true, by the way.
of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich.
Look, I don't know the details of his accusation that the FBI is cooking the books, but I kind of fucking doubt it.
Coming from someone who has been...
Like, why? Why would you... I mean, I guess if the Biden administration told them to, but
prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference.
yeah, an excellent point. It's funny that he's the tough on crime candidate when he himself is a convicted criminal.
Has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the...
I don't know. Is it tired? It feels pretty fucking new. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is tired, but it's changed form. It's a lot more frightening.
housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
I'm exhausted with both of your same old tired playbooks. I'm exhausted with this same election over and over and over and over again. Where it's like, that Republican is an existential threat and I'm the solution. And they're always telling the truth about the first half and not about the second. Yes, they are an existential threat. No, Kamala. No, Obama. You're not the fucking solution.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case?
So here's the thing about this, right? Because Trump is a uniquely criminal politician and president, but he does have a point that the DOJ and the entire justice apparatus came down on him, and it was political because every other president has committed horrible crimes. We don't charge them. So really, what is the difference if you try to overthrow the government? Like, what's the fucking difference? There isn't one. So, I don't know. Like, if you want to be like, hey, you're corrupt, you're a problem, then you need to also, you need to be not corrupt. You need to not be a problem. And the Democrats are corrupt and a problem. And so is every other president.
They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the Supreme Court ruled that a president cannot be criminally convicted for actions undertaken as part of their official business in office. And one of the conservative judges, God, see, I gotta, my memory's horrible. I gotta get this shit and politics is one of my good areas, but I gotta get this shit down. I can't remember which judge it was, but they basically said that if Trump were to have his political opponents assassinated, that would be within his purview as commander-in-chief. So who fucking knows? I guess we have a king now.
The Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House.
See, I like that. I like that grin. That's the first face from him tonight that I believe is that he's like, yeah, just list off all the shit I got away with. List it.
No guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump,
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get,
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't.
I don't know. I don't know. I find it difficult to care about the Russia shit. Yeah, they interfered in our elections. No, like Trump is not on the fucking payroll of the goddamn Russian government. Like, don't take it to that Rachel Maddow nonsense. But at the same time, like, we interfere in their shit. We interfere in elections all over the world. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's just part of being a country in the modern world. You interfere in other countries' elections to try and move things in your direction. I mean, in some way, like, how do you not interfere in someone's election? It's such a gray sliding scale. I just don't care. I don't know. Like, if Americans are so stupid that they get tricked by Russian misinformation and propaganda, I mean, sorry, that's your fault for building your education system to produce obedient worker drones instead of educated people. You know, like obviously you can't fully inoculate someone against propaganda, but you can help.
Don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
Yep, sure did. Great for pointing that out. Everyone loves fracking. You know, fracking is everyone's favorite thing. It creates so many jobs. Great for the environment, you know, no mysterious earthquakes. You know, for those of our, you know, my audience is non-existent, but maybe in the future. For those autistic members of the audience, that was sarcasm.
My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil.
I mean, I guess. See, if you were the leader that you say that we need, fracking would not be involved.
Had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hard-working
Oh my God, shut up. Shut up. It makes me like you less and less every time you bring up, oh, I'm middle class. Oh, I'm middle class. I'm from the middle class. Oh. That is something I should find out about you. You know what? It doesn't matter. This is a me thing. I get that apparently somewhere somebody gives a shit about this shit. So I guess she has to say it, but I hate it.
Who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare.
I don't even remember what the question was. She's gone off on...
Is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
See, I don't know. I don't like, what do you value? What are you saying to me? This is just a string of platitudes and polished mythology. Like,
And name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up.
yeah, how are you going to lift me up? You haven't mentioned that. Where's the policy that's going to lift me up? How about that?
I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years.
Yeah, she said she was. That's true.
Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
That was weird. She didn't say anything.
Wait a minute, I'm talking now. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now.
Yeah, she didn't say anything. God damn it. Trump was so eager to jump down her throat that he saw her lips moving. She didn't say shit.
If you don't mind, please.
Yeah. That only works if she actually tries to talk, Trump.
Does that sound familiar? She went out.
That was bad, though. Her reaction made that. Trump fumbled it, and then she fumbled it, and it worked out for him.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
You know, I'd heard that he'd said that, but it's still absurd. I mean, I don't know. Like, what a thing to be worried about. First of all, like, if it is happening, then I support it. And if it isn't happening, then yeah, that makes sense.
This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she
Radical left liberal. Well, you know, I want to make a joke about how like those are mutually exclusive, but they are not, in fact. And I am a leftist liberal. So.
will never allow fracking in
What you gonna
Pennsylvania.
do?
If she won the election,
Or maybe I'm a liberal leftist. Maybe that's more, you know, make liberal the adjective there.
fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys.
Yeah, it's almost like oil is much, much cheaper than it should be, that the price has been artificially suppressed, and that we should be transitioning to something else. You know, it's almost like our society doesn't actually make sense anymore, and we're slowly killing ourselves. I don't know.
Guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment,
We're
as she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindy, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President,
Man. Yeah, it is only a month or so away. Pretty wild. My birthday coming up too. Trump was elected on my birthday. I would say the first time, but there was no second time. So Trump was elected on my birthday. Well, really 2 a.m. the day after my birthday, but whatever.
On January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world.
Hopefully
and
you
crime
can't
rates are
fucking
down
hear
all
this.
over the world because of it.
But let me just
one
ask
of those,
you-
David, one of those people are going to be prosecuted. One of the people that burned down Minneapolis is going to be prosecuted. Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. One of those people are going to be prosecuted.
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big.
Yeah. Former president, I had nothing to do with the transfer of power.
I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know.
Look, I'm not going to like relitigate Jan 6th, okay? If you were like paying attention on the day, this is obviously a lie. He wanted to join them. He wished he could have, like, the Secret Service had to stop him from trying to go march with his supporters.
No. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't
Or
done by
whatever
me.
you
It was
wanna
done by
call it.
others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their job.
I've seen that tape. I do not remember the daughter saying that Nancy is fully responsible for what happened.
I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about
I do think that was an interesting choice by her. I wish that she would come out publicly and explain why she made that choice.
you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
And maybe she has. I haven't seen it.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia,
And if I'm not mistaken, he defends that to this day. There were fine people on both sides.
the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching.
Oh, did you not say that, Trump? See, at least he's reacting now. At the beginning, he wasn't fucking reacting.
Remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand.
Yeah, I know. On the margins. You know. What do I get out of this campaign? Well, I won't overthrow the government. That shouldn't be. That is too low a bar for me.
Stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
That was a little bit of a flub on the like general theme she's been going for. The only good thing, like the slogan "We're not going back," golden, just beautiful. It like not only is it catchy, not only does it talk about Trump, not like, but it's also it puts forward it like what do you say to that? It's an actual thing they're saying. We're not going to go back to the past. We're not going to turn this fucking thing around like the fascists want us to. There's no argument against it. Make America great again. Like it's a make America great again. We're not going back. It's a response. It's good.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also,
yes, that is true. The bloodbath thing, that is a. I do think it's misleading. Although I do, I understand why she's using it, but it is a lie, and I don't appreciate that. I do want a little more honesty in our politics. Yeah, the bloodbath thing. He was clearly talking about like, because of course. An actual bloodbath is not a bloodbath. Loss of money on Wall Street, now that is a bloodbath. So really, it's not the defense he thinks it is. He's like, no, I would never care about people enough to use the term bloodbath. I'm talking about the markets.
Charlottesville. That story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper. But
no,
they
true.
still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all
okay, 2025, though, that is legitimate. Okay. A lot of the people who wrote Project 2025 were involved with Trump's first administration and will likely be involved in the next administration. Furthermore, the Heritage Foundation, which is the think tank, if you don't know what a think tank is, it's a bunch of big brain boys come together and they're like, what should we do politics wise? There's lots of them on the right, not so many on the liberal side, none on the left, essentially. Because think tanks and money are kind of like, they go together. And the left is not rich. Kind of our defining thing. But the Heritage Foundation has been creating the Republican policy platform for years and years and years. It is strange and obviously dishonest to claim that there's nothing to do there, that it's not related. Obviously, it's fucking related. Anyway. I don't know.
all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing it?
Gee, I fucking... It's just all he's going to talk about. You know what? At least they're done talking about fucking trans people as much. I don't know. I guess the choice seems to be, okay, genocide of Browns and LGBT, or just the Browns. And it's like, what? What do you mean? I want something else. And it's like, and then our democracy, Uncle Sam comes to me and he's like, nope, you got to pick one. And it's like, then I'm not picking, and then it's like, okay, well then you get both. then you go in the camp and it's like, okay, but I'm not going to vote against me going in the camp to put someone else in the camp. It's like, oh, but they'll be there anyway. And it's like, how do I, in good conscience, it's like, well, you don't, but you do it anyway.
And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020
Yeah, no fucking kidding. I was having the exact same goddamn thought. Thank you, moderator guy.
election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say it.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker.
Yeah, and still denying the election.
That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got
Except for Biden.
63, which was what I got in 2016.
I don't know if you know. Again, the population goes up over time. It's not impressive.
You can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of
This is how dumb we've gotten. We need good borders and good elections. Good borders, good elections.
these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote.
Oh, fucking God, I'm only halfway through.
They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video.
Yeah, the, Fuck. There's just no way out of this. We're just fucked. There's just gonna be a genocide of fucking people trying to enter our country. No matter what we do. That's just... I don't know. I can't accept that. I mean, if I really accepted that, I'd just join the fascists. I mean, look at me. You know? I'm an Aryan poster boy. All I'd have to do is shave and cut my hair real short. I look good with short hair. You know, like a Nazi, but good. You know, handsome. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. There's just something in me. I can't accept it. I kind of wish that I could. I don't know. My life would be easier, wouldn't it?
Video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge
Republican,
looked at it.
and said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where
A technicality, the judge looks at it and he's like, you don't have any evidence. Like, what is this case even? A technical...
a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's
I
how we
mean,
lost.
yeah, if
You look
the
at
thing
the
that
facts,
you're...
and I'd love to
If you're alleging that something happened that clearly there's no evidence of it, then yeah, no, you have no standing.
have you. You'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation.
I think you
That
both helped. You know, it's a team effort. The decline. I don't know. I certainly feel like we're in decline. I mean, you know, it's hard to see these things as they're happening, but that is the vibe, yeah.
Dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something.
Oh, another unfair fact check from ABC.
that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming
Stop the steal, okay?
election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly
Even he thought it was a good line. He laughed. He smiled. He's still smiling.
he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute.
I like that. I like that. Either he's a liar or he's a senile, confused old man. That's good framing. I haven't seen that clip. That's good framing.
To respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary.
Who the fuck cares about Viktor Orban? It took me a minute. And the only reason I know who Viktor Orban is because I have like family friends with Hungarian blood. That's the only reason. Is because I know some Hungarians.
They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China.
Yeah, do you hear that, American people? Viktor Orban, the Viktor Orban has endorsed me. What are you doing, Trump? What are you doing?
Was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden...
Her little wry smile. I like it.
Put it back on...
I wish I didn't like her. You know? Like, I don't know. She's just so underwhelming. I mean, obviously she's better, yes, but like, she's for increasing border security, you know, which is not what we need to be doing. We need to, you know what? Maybe I should explain my border policy. Okay. Here's the deal. The tropics and the subtropics are going to become largely uninhabitable. Now, here's the thing. Climate change is going to cause everybody everywhere to move and adapt. There are going to be people who leave and there's going to be people who adapt everywhere. Right along the equator, there will still be people, right? But their lives will be difficult and very different. And a lot of them are going to leave, you know? So everywhere people are going to move, everywhere people are going to adapt. But in the tropics and subtropics, I'd say probably the majority of people are going to have to move. In the tropics, things are going to become hotter than humans can handle. And in the subtropics, things are going to dry up, right? So that leaves the temperate bands. What countries have large amounts of temperate land? That is an interesting question. Who, I wonder. Well, there are three big ones. Lots of smaller ones. Three big ones. Russia, the United States, and Canada. Now, there are some in Europe. Problem with Europe is that if the Atlantic circulation system, if the AMOC goes down, Europe is going to be, the Mediterranean's going to be sweltering hot, and the north of Europe is going to be freezing cold. So Europe's kind of screwed, probably. And so Europe's kind of out of the picture. Japan has an okay outlook. They're kind of in the subtropics, but obviously being islands, they have a moderating effect. So Japan's kind of important. Mongolia is another smaller one, but again, not as good as Russia. And then in the southern hemisphere, it's basically Tasmania, which, like, how many people can you cram into Tasmania? Actually, Australia might have a good outlook. Australia is a big bag of question marks. New Zealand, that's, obviously a climate haven. And then as far as South America goes, it's only Patagonia. So southern Chile, southern Argentina, and that's it. So a lot of people are going to have to cram into Russia, the United States, and Canada. And what are we going to do when they show up at our doorstep? It seems like the Democrats and Republicans are in full agreement. Well, we're going to shoot them down with machine gun fire because they are not welcome. Do not come. And I don't know. That's the future I would like to avoid. But really, this election is kind of about World War III. And I do think that Kamala Harris is not... She doesn't come off to me as a war hawk, hopefully. Although she doesn't talk about it much. I don't know.
Day one, but he ended the XL
I really shouldn't rant so much. This is already taking so long.
pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this
Again, he brought up Orban again.
weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate
Like, he just keeps hitting it home. Like, everybody loves Orban. Like,
just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they...
I do agree that it makes them look weak that they didn't have a real primary process. She would have won it. Why not just have the primary process so that you can say, hey, we did it. We had a primary. She's our elected candidate. Then they wouldn't have this line of attack against
threw
her.
him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her.
I talked a little bit about that in my Use Democracy to Save Democracy video a while back.
Can't stand her. But he got
President.
14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay
President,
with it
Mr.
because
President, your time
I
is
think
up.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected.
Yes, which is like just the tiniest step better than Biden. Here's another thing to consider, and this is particularly with the Israel stuff, is that she is still the sitting vice president, which means that she can't contradict the president. I mean, she could, but obviously that would be bad for her, bad for both of them. And so she kind of has to toe this line because Biden is a true ideological Zionist. He believes in the Israeli settler colonial project. He's like a true blue believer. And so she can't really diverge too much. So I don't like, obviously I don't like what she's saying, but I'm also taking it with a grain of salt because I don't think she's capable of expressing her real opinions on this issue and maybe a lot of other issues. But this issue in particular is very obviously she's under a lot of different pressures.
Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100
Maybe she walks
hostages
it back
remain.
even.
Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly...
Yeah, okay, immediately go into October 7th. So obviously, yeah, can't. Okay, let's just keep going. I'm obviously, Hamas is terrible. All religious people are terrible, okay? and spiritual people and mystical, esoterical, occultist people, including me. Oh, you can't see. I got a little altar over there behind the microphone. There you go. Voila. Anyway. I'm like a secular practitioner. I even consider myself to be kind of like a secular Christian as well. I don't condone any belief in the supernatural, but I understand religious and oh fuck, did I just go back?
A nation in decline, and
Fuck.
they have
It was like 55 something. God damn me.
Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline.
Yeah,
The
there we go.
XL
Okay. Fuck, now I've lost my whatever.
pipeline in our country, he ended that.
Oh, right, obviously. Okay, Israel is the aggressor. Israel was a mistake. The Jews should have just come to live in America. Like, fuck, if I had a time machine. Anyway.
He let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no
I mean, true.
votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what?
Okay.
I'll give you a little...
Guess I was a little more ahead of that.
Hostages out. And so we will continue
Close enough.
to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that,
Yeah, a two-state solution is not a solution. It needs to be a one-state solution. I support a one-state solution, a zero-state solution, or a 51st state solution. Those are the three solutions to this problem.
that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich
The way he says terror. No money for terror.
nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened.
I mean, I highly doubt that.
Get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he...
I mean, that... Okay. You know, I've been fact checking all night. That one, 100% true. He said I would dictator day one, only one day. You know, find me a historical example of that.
He said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that...
See, now he's back to the stone face.
These
What's the stone
dictators-
face? You just looking down?
And autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week.
Their crime weights. Did Trump just ooh speak at me? Their crime weights. Crime weights.
Said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National.
If I'm not mistaken, the Nord Stream pipeline, that was in like to get around Russian gas. So there's like geopolitical reasons why that's being built, and why the was it Dakota Access? Which pipeline did they shut down? Whatever, who cares? The pipeline in America, the domestic pipeline, they shut that down for environmental reasons, and then they created this pipeline for geopolitical reasons. I mean, not great again, but like at least there's a reason, you know, and you're not just supporting fracking.
National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Back with more. Back already. You're gonna play commercials in your. Oh my fucking god!
They're in for a
Exactly.
Jesus Christ!
Into the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration.
Man, 2.5 years in this conflict. That is wild. You know, it was during those early days in the war in Ukraine when I finally made the decision that I was going to pursue a YouTube career, or at least attempt it. 2.5 years. Took me a minute to get my shit together.
That we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being
So yeah, this is the pro-Russia stuff, like why Russia would want,
killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for 150 billion.
Yeah, no shit, dumbass. But you know what? Europe is, you know, people joke. They're like, Americans, how Americans see the world, and it's just America. You know? Problem is, it's fucking true. You know? Like, all of Europe has the same goddamn GDP as we do, and we control the entire fucking globe. Like, yeah, it's our fucking world, bitch. You just live in it. You know, I say that like I have any control over this democracy, over this republic. So fucking cold.
Dollars less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said,
honestly, that's not that big of an ask, especially during an ongoing war. But like, fuck off, Trump. Whatever. Like, you know any goddamn thing geopolitically.
I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about World War III, right? If World War III goes down, like I said, 2026, that's my prediction. If World War III goes down, we're already in it. Like, we're in the early days, you know? It's one of those things where you can't know for sure whether or not you're already in. Like, it's a... You know, life is lived forward, understood backwards. It's a historical thing, a war like that. A world war, specifically, I suppose. Wider conflicts. Like, they emerge slowly, and so you can't tell exactly where they start while it's happening.
David, we're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know.
You know, by the way, make sure to like and subscribe and do the things, because I live right underneath a... You know, you look at those nuclear target maps, I'm going to get lit up like a Christmas tree. I'd like to move.
If he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on...
Right, but... I mean, you were asked, like, sort of, you know, in an egotistical, sort of self-centered, America first kind of way. So those lives are not American lives. So not really an answer to the question.
support for Ukraine in this moment.
Not that I agree with that framing. I tend to take a word like global, sort of internationalist, like, I'm a citizen of the world. You know, if I consider my identities, right, it's like, you know, human. I'm a citizen of the world. I'm like part of the biosphere. I'm part of this Earth thing we got going on. That's how I conceptualize myself first. And then second, I'm like, okay, I'm from the West. And when I say the West, I don't mean I mean the West of the West of the West. I'm talking about the American West. You know, you know, I consider myself to be somebody from that region between the Cascades, Sierra Nevadas, and the Rocky Mountains. You know, that's me. And then from there, it's like, I guess I'm a Wyomingite, I'm a Nevadan, I'm an American, I'm white. You know, I don't know.
But also, as commander-in-chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin? And would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says
Well, but he is criticizing your administration.
that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans.
Yeah, and the way you answered the question does leave you open to that attack. You did not sort of assuage my fears that you're just going to be like, yeah, you can have Ukraine.
Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the...
Right, but our international rules and norms are fucking, like, they're a thing of the past. They're done. They're destroyed because of your administration's handling of the Israel-Palestine fucking conflict. You know, the Palestinian genocide.
The importance of sovereignty and territorial...
There is no more international order. You burnt it to a fucking... you know what, actually, I shouldn't say you... you know... if you don't know this and you're an American, then I don't know what to tell you. But if you're a foreigner and you need, like, some explanation of U.S. politics, the vice president is mostly a ceremonial position. They don't have a lot of power. They vote in the Senate if there's a tie, but that's it. And other than that, they're bench warmer number one. You know, they're our backup president is is basically all they do. And so I shouldn't criticize Kamala too much because, again, like I said, Biden is an ideological Zionist. So really, it was Biden who burnt up the international order. Trump and Biden are some of the worst presidents in American history. Really, really bad. I really hope Kamala's right. That slogan, "We're not going back." Yeah,
Real integrity. And
I can get behind that. You know, even now, like I've made this video primarily to criticize her and the Democratic Party, and yet I still can't help but be sort of. I mean, she's young. I think that's literally it. But we're not going back.
met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
Okay, but your support of Ukraine pales in comparison to your support of Israel, one of which is engaged in a defensive war to prevent an invasion, the other of which is engaged in an offensive genocide and several wars at this point.
Right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to...
God, what would he taste like if you, like, chop Trump up into little bits and put him on the grill? God, I don't even know. I'm so curious.
to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now.
Yeah, see, he should have saved that line for then, although she might not have spoken unless he'd already burnt that line. Quiet, please was good. He should have said that with more force.
Now, but eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with.
That's a pretty strong attack, but I don't know how that's going to play. You know, we're nearing the end of this, and this is a lot more neutral than I thought it would be. I expected him to spiral from that comment. That's what everybody made it sound like, is that he just got trounced. But this is pretty even. I mean, obviously she came out on top, and there's no doubting that. But, I mean, this is not the knockout that it's been portrayed to me as. And that's what she really needed, especially considering that he isn't agreeing to a second one. I mean, he knows that he lost.
With her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a...
Who would even... Nobody would even keep track of that. Nobody cares about how good a vice president is.
Horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And
That's pretty strong language. If only if those kids could read, they'd be very upset. You know, if only the American people were capable of understanding what she just said.
very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and
The significance of the passage of time?
responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan.
You know what? That seemed genuine. That might have been genuine.
Came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the...
But it seems like the thing like that she really stressed on was personal flattery. Like he's unprofessional. He's unserious. That's what bothers her. He's like a narcissist, therefore he's a joke. Because she doesn't strike me as a narcissist. Takes one to know it, you know.
the time to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen, for years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died.
Yeah, so it's like almost all foreign policy and like they're not even focusing on the economy really, which is wild. I think the news media is fascinating in their like complacent, not complacency. Well, maybe complacency actually, but in the way that they're complicit in this laundering of our politics. Like they make it look like it makes sense, like it's respectable. They treat it seriously, even though it's obviously gone off the rails. Like, I don't know, like what? Shouldn't they be grilling them on the things that they're not talking about, but they only talk about the things that they have talked about? Like they only ask them questions that they know the candidates are capable of answering. They don't try to throw them any curveballs. They don't try to throw them any hardballs. It's lame.
Chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them.
That was an interesting, I wonder if she rehearsed that. That seems like it could have been genuine or acted well.
To Camp David, because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the
Yeah,
negotiations
thank
with
you.
the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an
I remember that. You're gonna have to figure that out, Abdul.
agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason
I just want it to be over. I'm so hungry, and I still have another debate. Like I need to go scarf some fucking food and then film another one of these. Ugh.
it was good. We were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
and
on.
these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my
I would also like to move on.
opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently
Woo. Okay.
said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I
asking,
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her.
I read that she was not black. What he means is that he read that she was Indian, and then I read she was black. Oh, is it possible, Trump? It's possible. You could be more than one thing. You could be more than one fucking thing. She's black. She's Caribbean. She's Indian. She's Canadian. She's American. Okay, those are the things that she is. Like me, I'm American. But if you dig into my history, I mean, my family, like my namesake, the Applebys, we've been here since before the revolution. But so I'm a proper mutt. But if you look at the big things, it's like Norse, Anglo, Scottish, and some from my mom's side, some Iberian, Spanish and Portuguese for those not in the know.
That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this.
Yeah, I certainly do. I want better than both of you, but yes, he is obviously,
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other.
I mean, some of us do. Clearly, some of us do.
I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people. Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Okay, but you won't invest in either. So what are we going to do?
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
Yeah, it's like we can invest in hate and division, or we can invest in nothing. I'd like to invest.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying.
Let me think. Is there a more divisive presidency in my lifetime? Oh, right. Your presidency, Trump. You really divided people, didn't you?
Destroying our country. And they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years.
That's not how
ago,
that works.
Because there's nothing.
Exoneration, proving innocent. No, you do not plead again. Whatever. I don't think it went to retrial. Maybe it did, actually. Maybe it did. Maybe I'm wrong.
Now, I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had.
She is Biden. She is Biden. I don't know, Trump. I don't know if I buy that line.
A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time's up.
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump.
Okay, yeah, the line has been diffused. Sorry, Trump. It was a nice try. I see what you were going for. I really do.
And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
True.
One who believes in
Yeah, the only reason I like you. The only reason I like you. I'm almost 30 years younger.
what is possible. One
The fact that that's enough.
who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of
A
always
sen-
disparaging.
See, a sense of optimism, vibes, joy. That's not enough. I don't want a sense of optimism. I want a workable plan. I want it to be exhaustively described step by step how you're going to do it. And what you're going to do, okay, well, if we can't go through Congress, then we'll tackle it this way. If we can't tackle it that way, then we'll come at it from this angle, that's what I want. Okay. And you have not provided that, not in the slightest.
The American people, I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment.
Yeah, but that's a Band-Aid on a fucking bullet wound. Come the fuck on. That is not enough.
Of $25,000
It's not even close.
down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation I believe, David.
See, I might benefit from two of those policies, and I'm still not convinced. I don't know. I'd like to be able to buy a home and use that tax credit. I'd like to be able to start a business and use that tax credit. I'm good on the kids, but it's still not enough. It's not enough.
That people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to
Yes.
policy. Let's turn
We
to
have
policy.
to
There we go. That was a better move forward integration there.
move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate.
We're not going back integration. She has a buyback program, which see, here's the thing. Here, the Democratic policy, for me, most of the time, it's just that it doesn't go far enough. But there are some times where I do straight up disagree with the Democrats, and guns are one of those. I think that I'm kind of an extremist on guns, and it's not even necessarily because I think it's a good idea. It's just because I think, well, there should be at least one country where people running around with grenades in their pockets. Sounds kind of interesting. So I not only like am I in favor of everything we have now, I'm also in favor of like you should be able to own an automatic weapon or a basically if the government can own it, you should be able to own it. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, so you should be able to own a nuke. And the answer is no. Nukes should not exist. I'm for nuclear disarmament. So there you go. That's that's the line there. In fact, that's kind of the point. Is that if a weapon is so dangerous that the world couldn't survive your average citizen owning it, then that weapon is too dangerous to exist, period. I don't know. I like little mechanisms like that, as above, so below. That's apply it to government, huh?
Everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's why.
In Pennsylvania. Yeah, they're really counting on this Pennsylvania fracking. Like, fracking does not produce that many jobs. It's a relatively low manpower kind of activity, especially compared to traditional oil extraction.
Her plan is until just recently.
I just need to
Lindsey,
respond.
oil and
No,
natural
the
gas.
former president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just
going
need
to move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight,
Yeah, you're working on. I'm surprised healthcare even got mentioned. I would really like some climate. And they never mention space. Nobody talks about space anymore. It's like one of my top issues. I'm like, if there was a Republican president or a Republican presidential candidate that I was convinced was not a fascist, and that was for a massive expansion of NASA, I could be a single issue voter for that. Like, you could get me to switch teams if you just pledged, like, I'm going to increase NASA's budget by an order of magnitude.
years after you first started running. Do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care. Always was. It's not very good today. And what
True.
I said that if we
Fact check true.
come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when
I can't remember what he's talking about, but it must have not been that great.
I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as
Because I care about healthcare. And if it was good, I would have remembered.
it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it.
Yeah, no shit. But you don't have a plan.
But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. Yeah, pretty. I've heard that line. Yikes. Concepts of a
I'm not
plan.
president right now. But if
Yeah, well, you didn't have plans when you were president. I remember you put forth a plan, and everyone hated it. It was absurd. I can't even remember what the plan was. But it was nonsense, immediately rejected by the American people, and then you fucking went back to, oh, I have concepts of a plan.
we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, we know it's good. It's obviously a step it's a sprained ankle in the right direction. Okay. But we need more than a sprained ankle in the right direction. Okay. We need like leaps and bounds. And we need to, we need to land, and we need to not break our ankle as we leap and bound.
Conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight. You remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump.
Yes, and obviously that's good, but it's not enough.
Said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege.
Okay, well then why do I have to pay for it? I don't have to pay for my freedom of speech.
Of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
You know, my right to own a gun doesn't come with a subscription service fee.
Vice President Harris,
thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump.
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait
I fucking wish.
6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change.
Oh shit, there is a question. Oh my god.
President Trump, with
I
regard
take back everything I said. Oh, whoops.
to have clean air and clean water, Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you
Clean air and clean water.
do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I guess there is one caveat to that. So the Republican would have to be not a fascist, and they would have to acknowledge climate change. And then, you know, as long as they meet that very low bar, which they won't, but if they did, and then they were like, I'm going to increase NASA's budget by an order of magnitude, they got my vote.
You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that
you just immediately, you talk about like, you're asked about the climate, and all you can talk about is jobs. Like, it's all economic in, I don't know.
Part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000
Oh, I miss when he used to talk about himself in the third person more. That's good shit.
manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country because they will kill the United
Something the Biden administration has already done, which I am against, by the way.
auto workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he?
Why is Biden loyal to China? See, this is just the Russia shit, but from the other side. Like, no, Biden is not like loyal to China. Yeah, he might be a little less hawkish on China than you are, the same way you're a little less hawkish on Russia than he is. I mean, maybe a lot more, a lot less hawkish on Russia, maybe, but I don't know, it's just the reverse.
$3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling
Yeah, it's an administration. They're all crooked.
our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank
Yeah, like you wouldn't.
you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our
You better be right fucking back. Actually, I take it back. I hope this is all commercials.
statements. And
A different.
Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past.
Okay, yeah, I mean, strong start. You're, hammering home that slogan. I like it.
And an attempt to take us backward.
Mhm.
But we're
Yes, yeah. Contrast.
not going back.
We're
And
not
I
going back. We're not going back.
do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition.
See, this kind of fluffy stuff she should avoid.
Of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of
I will say it's not enough, but at least there are some specific things. Like it's something. It's enough that I still like her occasionally.
living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not...
Yeah, see, I don't know. I guess maybe somebody cares about the personal
putting themselves
angle. I don't.
first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years.
Okay, so this is a partially good point. Why hasn't the administration done it? Yes, absolutely true. Why hasn't she done it? Because she's a fucking. I mean, the vice president has about as much power over American politics, at least until very recently, when that. Fuck off. At least until very recently, where that. Fuck. Goddamn you, OneDrive.
Fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to.
Right. Okay. She's the vice president. She doesn't have that much power. She can't actually do anything on her own.
Jobs and all the things we talked
Jesus.
about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going
Yeah, I wish.
to make this country strong, whether you like it or not.
We can be strong and be sustainable at the same time. In fact, I would say that you must be sustainable in order to be strong. What's the point of strength that is like temporary, that isn't going that eventually we're going to kill ourselves? That's not strength.
Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question.
You know, that was a pretty, I don't know. That was a very lucid line from Trump. I don't feel like I normally get that vibe from him.
Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing.
I mean, that's true, but that was always true. we're kind of a clown fest over here, okay?
I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened
Did they call you and laugh at you?
to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any
We're not. Oh, okay.
idea what's going on. We have wars going.
I thought he just like had a kindergarten, like not even a sentence, but the country isn't a leader. We, as a democracy, are not a leader. Understood.
On in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry.
It would certainly be something to live through. I am concerned about World War III, but I don't believe that Trump would stop it.
Built our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our.
Okay. Yeah, many of them are criminals because they're people. Okay. But proportionally, they commit crime less than native-born Americans. So you're fine with crime as long as, as long as you're white. Got it.
Country, the worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Oh, all right. Well, good fucking morning, I guess, everybody. If you made it all the way to the end, like, subscribe, share it around, please. It really does help out. I do want to get this started as a career. I'd like to be able to, as I said, afford some non-duct tape headphones and, maybe an above ground dwelling. And I don't know. A real wedding ring would be nice. No. I'll this has been the Appleby Hour. I've been Appleby. Thank you for watching. Blah, 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 blah. Kill me, please.